Clare O'Neil, what's Labor's response to the Prime Minister's announcement?
Well, the Prime Minister's announcement makes it absolutely clear that there is a full-blown crisis in aged care today, one that is having serious and harrowing consequences for many of the 190,000 aged care residents. When I talk to providers, to staff, what I hear is that there are wounds being not tended to, people not getting enough food and drink, people are falling out of bed and no one is there to pick them up. People are not getting assistance with toileting, so they're sitting in urine and faeces because there is literally no one to help them. So what I want to know from government is what on earth they've been doing, because this has been going on now for about 6 weeks and it's, as always with Scott Morrison, too little too late.
How do you think aged care facilities should be prioritised for assistance?
Leigh, the government's going to have to work that through, but the key thing to understand about the government's announcement is that the Australian Defence Force are not going to be assisting with care. That's a complex task that requires a very specific skill set. And so a lot of the problems that I've just talked to you about there are not actually going to be solved by this. Critical thing to understand though, Leigh, is that this is not an adequate response either to the short-term crisis in aged care, nor to the incredibly long 9 years of neglect that has been subjected to this sector. So it's a response to what's happening immediately, but we've got to have a better answer out of government about how they're going to fix the structural problems
here.
If
you're saying people are falling out of their bed and they can't be picked up, but the ADF can't deal with that, I mean, what would be the solution to that?
Well, the proposal for the ADF was always to support things that are happening behind the scenes, things like cooking, some cleaning activities, things like logistics.
Yeah, but the needs you're talking about, how can they get fixed? Because that's urgent, right? So if you're saying the ADF can't do that, what needs to happen?
Yeah, okay, so there's a lot that needs to happen, Leigh, and one of the first things that we need to do is to make sure that we are actually vaccinating people in aged care, both staff and residents, against COVID-19. The booster program has been completely mismanaged, such that today 58% of aged care residents have been boosted. This is important because people getting COVID is one of the main drivers of the staffing shortages. We need to look at anything and everything that the sector is proposing. That includes formalising the role of families and volunteers who have been very much restricted from going into aged care centres. So these are the sorts of things that the sector is proposing. But Leigh, can I just say this is not an adequate answer to any of the structural problems here. Aged care is hanging on by a thread. It's not just one aged care home here or there. There are deep underlying issues here that were exposed by the Royal Commission, which the government essentially tossed aside the final report a year ago. If I could just leave your listeners with one fact, Leigh, the Aged Care Royal Commission told us that 2/3 of aged care residents were malnourished, literally starving under the care of their own government. That was a year ago. The government has done nothing about that problem. Now we've overlaid a pandemic on top of that, and that is how we've got to the state of emergency that we're in today.
Should any consideration be given to whether ADF personnel wear uniforms or not? Is it possible that some elderly people might find military uniforms in what is essentially their home confusing or confronting?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, Leigh, and I mean, I think the fact that the ADF have been called in, it's not an ideal situation to be in. That's the understatement of the year. And the reasons you point out there are quite right. There are very large numbers of people in aged care today who have dementia or other cognitive impairments, and they are, of course, going to find this very confronting and difficult to deal with. But I say again, Leigh, we shouldn't be where we are today. And how did we get here? It's 9 years of neglect, and now we're having to get to this position where we're calling in the Australian Defence Force into aged care in this country. It should never have happened.
Clare O'Neil, thank you.
Thanks, Leigh.
Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.